All right, YouTube. Sorry for the wait, but parts have been coming in pretty slow, or at least some of them. We are still waiting on pistons, but right now I have everything I need for the fuel, the whole fuel assembly. So let's hop into that and start getting that installed. So I am going to be running E85, so I had to get the E85 rated hose. This is called PTFE hose. This is -8, a whole bunch of fittings, 90s, straights, 180s, I mean you name it. Oh, these are the wrong ones. This is the fitting I talked about in my last video. It is a 3/8 hardline fitting to -8, and that's what I needed to use on the sending unit. This bulkhead right here. Now this is my return, and I didn't want to drill another hole, so I'm just using that as my return. Got a -8, so we're going to start running 2 lines out of there out to the front, and we're going to leave them a little long because I don't have the motor in yet. But what I'm thinking is I've got my previous return right here. I'm gonna run the return the same way, and the feed is gonna come up somewhere right there, 90 over. I'm gonna have my fuel filter sitting right there in that corner, and another 90 coming right here. And the reason I'm going with that, this fuel filter is actually kind of hefty. It's not the slim one, and so no matter where I put it under the car, I'm just a little worried it'll snag. My car's not that low, but still, that's kind of bulky. So it's going to sit right there. I'll be able to get to it, take it out, clean it. I've already done that before on the last setup. And also, since my engine's out, it'd be a perfect time to kind of redo some of my wiring here. As you guys can see, some of the heat tapes coming off. Yeah, just rerun probably that power. I don't really like how that's sitting. Same thing, I installed that with the motor in the car, so it was kind of tricky. So I'm going to rerun that, kind of clean this up a little bit while I'm at it. So let's go ahead and start stretching some line out. So I'm just going to tape this end off and start feeding it through the tank side. That's what I did last time, and it was easy for me. And I'll hop in there and show you guys what we got going on down below. Alright, so the lines are all the way in. Right here on this little cover, I'll probably take a knife and cut some of this out just to give it a little bit of relief. It's pretty flexible, so as you can see, it's bending on its own. But I'll probably do a little relief cut right here, give it a little bit of room to kind of pop back in place. But other than that, it looks pretty good. Got plenty of flex. Let me get my flashlight on that. Got plenty of flex going around that. Honestly, I don't even know what the heck that little deal is under there. It has something to do with fuel. But it's going around that, so it's not at the lowest point. And we just got a nice clean zip tie job coming up along the fuel lines and then coming into the engine bay. So bringing it up into the engine bay, I pretty much just followed the OEM fuel lines. Kind of tucked them up out of the way, make sure they're not in a pinch point. My return is coming right here. It's still going to get zip tied away from the steering rack, but that's kind of the route I'm going, because my fuel pressure regulator sits somewhere right here roughly, and it's coming out of the bottom of it. So this is where I'm going to leave it at right now. Obviously I'll have to cut it down, it's too long, but until I get the engine installed and the fuel pressure regulator set up, I really don't need to cut it right now. Also, I'm probably going to I might end up throwing my ethanol sensor somewhere here. It'll either be right here or between my regulator and fuel rail. Not quite sure yet. And then for the feed, coming up this way, and I just tucked it around. I was going to use a fitting, a 90-degree fitting, but it's a pretty smooth transition. And right here, the firewall cover, this just unscrews. And I did this to my wiring. I just propped this down and I tucked part of my wiring in there, kind of for a heat shield. So I did the same thing with the fuel line. And you're gonna have a whole bunch of tabs. They're like zip ties with I guess I could show you guys one if I find one. Must have tossed them all right here. You have these zip tie deals with these little tabs that go into these screws here. I just popped them all off, and I'm going to tuck all my wiring back as far as I can to the firewall, just to kind of give it a cleaner look and a lot more room back here and keep them away from that heat. So we're going to get the fuel filter set up pretty much like right here somewhere. So I'm going to go ahead and get that cut down, do the fuel filter, and then go to a 90. And I'm going to leave like 2 feet of hose sticking out right here, and that's ready to get cut down later on. Same thing with this side once I get that motor in. So this hose to cut is essentially the same. You go about it the same way as you would the regular hose. Go ahead and get it taped off. I'm using some masking tape, and I'm gonna cut it with a cutoff wheel right now, right down the center of it. Using this bad boy right here. So what you do after you cut it, you go ahead and take the tape off, and you peel. You just push back on some of the outside cover to get the hose on the inside exposed. You disconnect your fitting right here, and obviously you run this thing down first, and it's probably easier actually to do it with the tape on. I'll do that after when I'm not holding the camera. And then after you get that deal on, this is the reason why you expose some of that hose. You slide this fitting on there, make sure it's nice and flush, and then you can get this propped in here and singe it down. So pretty easy. So here you go. I pulled some of it back, and as you guys can see down there, it's pretty dirty. What I'm going to end up doing is I've got a bunch of bad fuel in my tank, so I'm probably just going to empty my entire tank into a or a jerry can from here and kind of flush that out. So I started shooting this video yesterday evening, and I didn't get done. Anyways, I ordered these relays, and they are here. Shout out to Amazon Prime. Also, if you guys are wondering, I got all of this off of Amazon as well, and the reason I go through Amazon is because I got Prime. Shipping's pretty fast. This is through Evil Energy. I've had pretty good luck with their stuff so far. This is an assorted kit, I think a 20-foot kit, and it comes with all sorts of fittings. I'm not going to need them all, and I bought 2 kits. The length of the car from the fuel tank to the front of the car is roughly 10 feet. Man, I'm tripping over everything. Must be my fresh kicks. So yeah, you're going to want to get at least 2 12-foot sections, just so you have a little extra to work with in case you mess up for the return and the feed. And if you go with like the 16 or the 20-footer, you're going to have plenty of hose to do all your connections in between, from the filter to the fuel rail, and then from the fuel rail to your regulator and all that good stuff. We're going to be getting the relay wired into the fuel pump, and I made the mistake of ordering the wrong relay, and by that I mean the thickness of the wire. This is a 12 gauge. This is the first relay I bought. It's a 4-wire relay, and the reason it's the wrong one. Is the fuel pump is a 14 gauge, and you don't want to step down. You want the same gauge wire all across, or else you're going to get resistance. That's going to create a hot spot. It may not melt anything. It may not, you know, go bad on you right away. It might happen down the road. It might not even be that much resistance. But I don't want to risk it. Also, my fuse, as you guys can see, I did start to wire everything, and then realized they weren't the same gauge wire. So I went ahead and ordered this one is a 5 wire relay. It's 14 gauge. It's going to work the same way. We're just not going to use the yellow wire. And here's the schematic for it. You've got the red that goes directly to the battery. You've got the blue, that's the positive to the pump. You got your black, that's your ground, and your white, that's your trigger wire. So I'm going to go ahead and show you guys how I'm going to wire it up. And yeah, we're going to run down to the store and grab a 14 gauge fuse instead of this 12 gauge, and some 14 gauge wire, and we're ready to get started on that. Also, I got all my AN fittings for my fuel rail. If you are running the hybrid racing fuel rail, mine came with the -6, and so if you do want to upgrade to the -8, here's the fitting you need. It's just an AN flare to an AN ORB, and obviously make sure the gaskets you are using or the O-rings are meant for fuel. Alright, so we now have everything we need. We've got a 14 gauge inline fuse. We got a spool of red and black, both 14 gauge. And I had a partial of red 14 gauge, which I already got the pin soldered on. Now I'm going to get the pin soldered onto the black one, and then from there put it into the plug, and we'll go from there. So I've got the pins plugged into the clip, and as you guys can see, I've marked it on the fuel pump so I know where my red, I guess where my hot and my ground is. So that's pretty much ready to get plugged back in. What I got to do now is go ahead and peel some of this back, expose some wire. We're going to attach a piece of wire to this and a piece of wire to this one as well. This is our trigger wire and this is our ground. And I think I'm going to mount my relay roughly somewhere right here. So I guess before I start stripping the wires, I'm going to go ahead and screw my relay down and then kind of go from there on the lengths of my wires. So I'd say somewhere about here. I'm pretty happy with it. I'll have a wire running over to the battery right here. The white wire is going to be running to the yellow, so I'll have to do a small section of wire right here. I'm just going to carefully tuck them under the lid. The blue's going to run there as well, and so is the black. The black's going to the black one on this one, and then the black one coming off of the fuel pump on the harness. I'm going to crimp a little I-ring on it and connect it to this ground right here. Also on my relay, so you guys can see, this is what's going to my battery. This is what's going to the fuel pump. Basically, I made it so I can plug everything out if I had to and replace the relay instead of just doing straight connectors. And you can't mess it up because I'm using a male and female on one of them, and then a different style for the smaller wires, and same thing, a male and female. So there's no way you could really mess it up. unless you like get these ends and try to plug them in together. So let's go ahead and get that plug put back in. Well, before that, we're going to go ahead and expose some of that wire and get probably about a foot of wire crimped onto that, a little more, to give us some room to work with. We'll get that plugged back in and start working on our ground. So right here with the plug, here's what I did. I came straight up with my negative and positive off the plug, poked a hole through the grommet, and sucked them through. And same thing with the trigger wire and the ground that's coming off of the OEM harness. I just cut a slot right in there and sucked them through another hole. I'm gonna run some electrical tape. It'd be nice to get some heat shrink on there, but I ain't got none that'll fit that. Run a band of electrical tape on that. I won't be able to close this, unfortunately. I don't want to force those over too much. That's about how much flex I got. I don't really feel like putting any more on. So with my heat shrink, I did have to actually, you see how these connectors right here have a little divot kind of sticking up? I had to shave that off, and then pretty much I put liquid electrical tape in there on top of my heat shrink, just to make sure we don't have anything exposed. Actually, there's a little bit exposed right there, so I'll have to add a little bit more onto that. And yeah, we'll get that plugged in, and this will all be coming up out of the lid. It'll just look a lot cleaner. Alright, so we've got that all in. I'm gonna leave this ground just a little long, not terribly long, but enough to get a little bit of wiggle room. And we're just gonna put it right here, right on top of this ground. And I guess it's grounding out through the actual bolt on the threads, because the paint here is not scuffed up. Now what I'll probably do is I'm going to go ahead and scuff that up real quick. I'm a little worried out. The more ground the better. So we got all that scuffed up. Just used like a 60 grit sandpaper. You don't got to go that crazy with it. Probably like even a 500 will work. Either that or a wire brush. A little wire brush on like a grinder tool or something. Okay, so what's the easiest way to put this? Maybe I did have just a hair too much wire. I guess I could go this way with it and try to... Make sure that's nice and snug. So our ground is good, and this is the ground, remember, coming off of the fuel pump. So this right now, we are going to put a black wire on here and a red. This is going to the ground on the relay, and this is going to the white on the relay for the trigger. And it looks like I just need, I don't know, about 12 inches of wire. Clean setup so far. We can zip tie everything to this little wire. hot going to the pump plugged in. Last thing remaining would be the red going to the battery. And what I've decided to do, if you look at my battery terminal here, I'm going to just run one of these right off of one of those bolts and slap my fuse on. So I'm going to go ahead and get my fuse wired on. So there you have it. I kind of screwed up and crimped this first. I should have put 2 heat shrinks on there, and I ended up using some tape and it looks pretty crusty. Honestly, I should probably just snip this, run 2 things of heat shrink in there and just recrimp this one. But let me just show you guys real quick how I'm going to lay that in. Okay, so I did resolder it, or recrimp it. Got a heat wrap on all of that. We already got our 30 amp fuse in there. And ready to go slap this thing on the battery. Alright, so this is our finished product. Don't go beast mode on this. You will crack it. And I'm going to have to buy a new one of these. But this is kind of what I decided to do. Kind of zip tie them all together. Might do some tape. But yeah, that's how you wire it up. So, alright, so in order to test to see if our fuel pump is actually working, all our wiring is good, you need to get your, oh crap, you need to get your harness. This is the injector harness right here, and the other harness that runs by your intake manifold. This is kind of how you can distinguish it. It's got a ground on it, so go ahead and just ground that out, which I did, and turn your key. Obviously no motor in here, so it ain't gonna start, but yeah, you can hear the fuel pump. Wow, that is actually a lot quieter than my 255. I can hear the fuel pouring out into the jerry can. I guess I did forget to tell you guys, I've got kind of a longer hose, or one of my fuel lines just running into a jerry can, and I'm just gonna basically just flush it a couple times, get all that gunk out of the lines. But yeah, it is it's working. Man, I can't get over how much quieter it is. So yeah, we are good to go. I'll probably find some way to wrap this, kind of make it a little more prettier. Need to replace this guy. Went a little too ham with it and cracked it. But other than that, that is good and done. If you guys have any questions, go ahead and comment them down below, but this is pretty straightforward. Alright, well that's done. By the way, it is hotter than hot out here. I don't know, I think it's like 100 degrees right now. Tomorrow they're promising 111. So yeah, it's a little hot in the shop. Pistons did come in, so I took them to the machine shop this morning. He's going to work on getting them bored, honed, the head and the block both decked. So hopefully it's just another couple weeks. He is kind of busy right now. I'm hoping here in about 2 weeks we can get that back and start working on the actual motor build, and I know you guys are looking forward to that. So am I. Hopefully get this car put back together and get running before rain season hits. So yeah, I will see you guys next time.